Good morning to all of you, and thank you for connecting, and welcome to our latest webinar titled So I Have Published, What Next? My name is Matilda Putz. I'm the business manager for Emerald Publishing for Caribbean and Central America. Today I'm joined by my colleague, Andre Yun, who is our editorial manager at Emerald Publishing for Latin America and Caribbean. He supports scholars with relevant information on international publications, and also it is a great honor to present today's guest speaker, Petronetta Pia Robertson, who is a documentalist librarian at the School of Education of the University of West Indies, St. Augustine, and she's also the managing editor for their peer-reviewed journal, Caribbean Curriculum. Her research focuses mainly librarianship, literary, and gender studies. Today, they will share their recommendations on how to get published and how to market your research. Before we start, a couple of housekeeping notes. The session is being recorded and the audience muted. You will receive an email within 24 hours with the recording in case you wish to go back to review anything or share with others. If you have any questions, please write them in the text box on the bottom right of your screen. We hope to be able to answer all questions at the end of the session. If not, we will get back to you individually. The full session should last approximately 2 hours and will include a couple of polls. I hope you enjoy the session. I will pass it over to Andre Yun. Andre, please go ahead.
Thank you, Matilde. It's a pleasure to be here today with you all and to see my dear friend Petra. Petra, thank you for inviting us, for having Emerald once again. And I hope we will also hear from you today. I'm looking forward to this session. I am going to share what we call the GGP, the Guide to Getting Published, which is a presentation made by the editors-in-chief of Emerald Journals. And I want to share this slide because I visited the Trinidad and Tobago, I think it was 7 years ago. And Petra, as you can see, we became so much better. We are so much good looking now. And I really miss traveling. I think all of us do it. So I really want to say thank you everyone for attending this session. I hope to see you guys really soon in the near future, and wish you much health and inviting you all to enjoy the session this morning, right? The session today is called So I Have Published, What Next? But for my part, I want to give us a few tips on how to be more successful, and I hope this will make sense, and prepare for Petra's part that will come just next. If you go on emerald.com, you will see many papers about papers, and this is just one of them. As you can see, there are so many marks here. We are not going to read them, it's not the case, but I think what we all want to avoid is this, right? So if we look at the left-hand side, close to the title, just underneath the title, it says the title should be the tagline for the entire study. So in this example, unfortunately, the authors did not write a really nice title. Many reviewers say that some titles are a bit misleading, which basically means that, and I think all of us have been through this, right? So we read the title and we expect authors to share something, but once you start reading the article, it's not exactly about that, right? So we want to be really good authors, we want to give people the right idea and not give them misleading ideas, misleading titles, but really to give them what they expect us to publish, right? I wanted to share this. If you go, if you download the PDF, and you can do it just now if you want, on the right hand side on document window, you can download the presentation. And if you see this article, you see many other tips, but I just wanted to highlight this one. So the author say, exaggerating can be a problem. I am not sure about the writing style in the Caribbean, but I can assure you all that in Brazil, and I am Brazilian, it is an issue here. We do tend to exaggerate things, and the authors say exaggerating what the paper will do, the importance of your contribution, and not delivering on the promises will compromise your contribution. Um, Once I was in Rio de Janeiro, Rio, here in Brazil, in this international conference, and this editor-in-chief from the United States was visiting us, and it was a really interesting session. He was comparing international journals, international papers to ours, the ones from Brazil. It was really funny, and he made this comparison and this joke saying, you know, international papers look like this guitar, and your paper looks more like this glass of water. So he said, you know, think of a guitar. You have the arm, and then it's kind of narrow, right? So you have the title, the keywords, the abstract, and once you go to the guitar's body, which is a large, you will see the literature review. And then there is this part of the guitar's body that comes narrow again, which is kind of where you will show your result. And then again, at the very bottom part of the guitar's body, which becomes large again, you will see the discussions about those results, the practical implications, the theoretical implications, right? So he was trying to teach us how a international article looks like. And he said, but your paper looks more like a glass of water. Why? Because you do put your title, the keywords, the abstract, and you guys tend to show lots of results. So that's why the large part of your article is this glass of water, right? Like looks like a glass of water. But at the bottom, when we do expect you to discuss those results, to present implications to the theory or practical implications and so on, you tend to forget those, right? So my recommendation to you is if you do show one result, discuss it. If you show different results, discuss them, right? And do not exaggerate. One of the questions that came from the public was, so editor, I can foresee something here. Should I discuss this in these discussions? In that case, for that specific question, this editor from the United States said, in this case, I would start a new article and bring this to a new paper, because I think you should stick to what you wanted to discuss in your original paper. So I think it became clear to all of us that in our case here, we tended to mix everything up, no? Right? And put everything in the same space, where we should be much more structured, organized, and really structure our ideas, right? And again, I do invite you to visit emerald.com to see all those papers about papers. We are going to see a few of them in this guide to getting published presentation, and I hope This will be very helpful for you and help you to be more successful in publishing in any good journals you want to publish, not just Emerald, but any good journal you want to publish your research. There is another text published on emerald.com, which is called Joining a Conversation. I really like this one. This is not a research article. It's an editorial, and that was published by the editors-in-chief of the European Journal of Marketing. One could say it's an old text, but the principles behind this text are still the same because good principles never change, right? So one of the things I want to share today is the first paragraph here, where those editors share with us about conferences. So they say, conferences provide an effective way of joining the scholarly conversation. And that comes to us from this perspective, this idea that to publish in a journal is like becoming part of this conversation, right? So a journal is the place where colleagues, professors, research make and keep a conversation about topics, research topics, right? And if you will want to publish in that given journal, we want to be part of that same kind of conversation. And this is really interesting because on the second paragraph, these editors say they present, who are they? The conferences present more recent developments in the field, and they compare these to articles that may have been written 2 or 3 years before their publication. Okay, so let me talk about this. If we want to know what has been researched recently, we could read journal articles, which is good, but they will certainly be kind of late because many research papers need to go through the publication process, and depending on the research topic on the journal, the article will need 2, 3, 4, 6, 12 months of peer review process. So they are not, let's say, so up to date, right? But if we attend a really good conference, we are going to hear about what will be published, right? So, and I want to comment one more thing on this context here. Emerald, as a publishing house, do understand that the conferences, international conferences, seminars, good opportunities for us to discuss research ideas are part of the publication process, right? So these editors say in the paragraph 3 here, for example, target 2 or 3 conferences in a field in a row to get to know personally some of the people and then to join the formal and informal discussions. Once I was attending a conference, and I think it was in Trinidad. It was BALAS, the Business Association of Latin American Studies. And I remember we were attending this Meet the Editors session, which is one of the very best you can attend in any conference. And then one of the guest speakers said, you know what? As important as the peer review is equally important the beer review. It was a joke, but the speaker was saying, when you attend a conference, obviously we all need to attend the sessions to present our papers. We want the feedback, but also there is the cocktail, there is the coffee break, there is the all those opportunities we give ourselves to get to know people informally Many of them will be authors, reviewers, editors of good journals. And it's an opportunity to get to know them personally, invite them to a coffee, beer, whatever, right? And then to many times ask them, if you are a young researcher, you will probably have your paper with you printed sometimes. Why not to ask them, what do you think of this paper, right? Um, do you think your journal would be interested in publishing this? And we have been delivering this session for nearly 7 years now, right, Petra? And uh, many young researchers come back to me by email and say, Andre, I did listen to your presentation. I went to this conference and I asked the editor that was by my side in this session. The answer the editor gave me was no, I am not interested in your paper, but it was good, honestly, because this this editor said, that journal X will be much more interested in your paper, and if I were you, I would change this and that, right? Why this answer was good? Because imagine many times when we are going to submit a paper to a journal, we need to double check reference style, everything a journal will ask us to do. And then you submit your paper to the journal and then you get rejected. Um, we all think, oh, it's not good enough, etc. But many times it's just the journal that is not the best venue for your research, right? So in that case, the no helped this colleague a lot, and then it actually allowed him to go to another journal and get published afterwards, right? So understanding that, interacting with people, getting to know them, doing our peer but also the peer review, right, is part of the research and publication process, will help us a lot, right? um, this is the most important slide for today, and I am going to spend much more time here. As I said, the GGP, the Guide to Getting Published presentation, is just a guide, and on this slide you will find some tips, some links, and I do invite you to read those articles at the top. On the left-hand side, the 100 PhD rules and actually the 100 research rules. They are amazing texts with 200 ideas to us on how to be more successful, right? I'm going to read a few of them. Obviously, we don't have enough time to read 200 here, but I do hope I will highlight some of the nice ones for us now. Number one, have a plan, right? Here in my country, in Brazil, the postgrad programs will ask you to either publish a master thesis, a doctoral thesis, or a number of research papers on some given journals by the time you end your postgrad program. Understanding this is just so important as uh, everything else in the program. So I can give you a few examples and I hope this becomes clear. So every day I do receive emails from colleagues from Brazil, Mexico, the Caribbean, and some of them will say, Andre, I need to publish this article, or I need to publish one book chapter, or I need to publish one teaching case because Emerald does have those teaching cases indexed on Scopus, and I need those points to give the program enough points so we are still considered by the government, by the education system here in my country, right? Unfortunately, in many cases, they don't have the time to publish because depending on the journal, the process will take 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. So it's important to have this plan, right? Knowing that, for example, at Emerald, on average, a article will be published in 4 to 6 months on average, right? But it could take longer, depending on the subject area. I can give us an example. So generally speaking, in computing, a journal will be much faster, but in my research area, which is information science, normally the journals will take much longer. It's just how it is, right? Um, some subject areas are just more slower compared to others. That's just the nature of them. So understanding that and have a plan will help us to be more successful and publish what we will be required to publish in a given time. Point number 2 here says choose a supervisor. It's a meeting of minds, right? The author of those two texts above, she kindly says that when we go to the university, we should be playing tennis with our supervisors, right? What does she mean? She says this: well, you will be probably required to read lots of texts. If you go to your supervisor's office and you haven't read the texts, how are you going to play tennis with them? You should read the texts, right? So you can have this meeting of minds and discuss the research ideas, and then to make it possible for you to evolve with your postgrad studies. And that's why the next point is complete a literature review, right? I am sure that at the university you will have access to great resources like Emerald and other databases. It's important to read relevant authors, to cite them in your studies, and to discuss their ideas. The same author from those 200 rules, she says, it's important to have critical thinking while you are reading those authors. And she actually have another tip. She says, try to put 3 bricks on the wall of knowledge. What is that? The wall of knowledge is just the whole entire database of all authors that are publishing in all possible journals. And while you are reading them, try to see if there is any gap where you could contribute and add something from your perspective. Those should be those 3 bricks, right? Or 3 research articles, or depending on where you are, your research, your master thesis, your PhD thesis, right? So that's why she says that we should have the critical thinking and this eye on while we do the literature review, we want to identify those gaps and contribute with our research articles. Then we move on and it says, look at other papers to ensure yours meets the requirements. You are not the first researcher in the world. Those are her words. In many cases, many authors come to us and they say, Andre, um, how can I know the structure of a given article? Well, try to read the journal, right? Um, Once I was in Colombia in this very nice business school, and I was sharing this panel with a professor, and she said she had actually just one slide for her entire session, and she was saying this: if we go back 20 years, uh, it was possible for us to do research, write an article, and try to publish it in any possible journal that we wanted to publish this research paper. It's still possible to do this, but I would recommend you to do something different because things changed. And her opinion was, it's so much more difficult now to publish. There are so many different journals with high impact factors. Competition is so hard that this shifted. Now it's important for you to know which authors are publishing in that journal you want to publish, what is the reference style, who are they citing, what is the conversation they have in that journal. You should be reading that journal. You should know who those authors are, and then if you want to publish in that journal, you'll probably cite them because you want to complete and contribute to their research. So what she was saying was, today, because it's so hard to publish, we should be looking at other papers to see what they are discussing and publishing, and to ensure we are adding something relevant to their discussion. And that's why this author is saying, you're not the first researcher in the world. Try to see what the colleagues published before you so you can check them and again have this critical thinking and try to contribute with something new to what they published before you. Learn to write. That's the next tip. Writing is an art. I know it's kind of difficult to write. Normally, what I share here in Brazil is that if writing was easy, the all of us would be writing books like Paulo Coelho and selling bestsellers all over the world, becoming multimillionaires selling novels. But truth is, it's so hard to write. And uh, one of the tips is really by reading those successful researchers and try to copy their models, shadow them, we will probably be more successful, right? The next tip is attend colloquius, workshops, sessions like this, um, seminars. I know that there is this really good institution in Brazil where they keep online seminars like this every Friday, where their students will have the opportunity to present their papers and get criticism, feedback, and then they will change, adapt their text, and then submit those papers to the journals where they want to publish. And I know they have been really successful. It's one of the best institutions here in the country. Um, on the left hand side, it says write a great abstract. For those that still do not know the structured abstract that is published by Emerald, I do invite you to read them. When you think of a abstract, you will normally think of that black box. In our case, it's called structured abstract. So if you want to know about the purpose, you just go to that part. If you want to know the methodology, it's all organized, and it's just the system we use on our submission platform. We hope it's more helpful to authors to get the information structured, and then it will certainly help readers to go to what they really need to know. The next tip says, do not overlook limitations and implications. This applies not only to research papers, but also to theses. Deep thought and effort is their recommendation by this author. Why that? Uh, After months of writing, we tend to be tired of writing, introduction, methodology, everything. And normally, we will be a bit tired when we need to write the discussions, social implications, theoretical implications, practical implications. But the recommendation is please do not overlook them, the limitations, implications. Do put deep thought and effort on those parts. As I said previously, when I started the presentation, I shared the experience we had in Rio when that editor was teaching us about the structure of the guitar, and that reviewers will expect us to discuss the results and tell us, okay, but what's the implication of your paper to the theory, or any other possible implications, right? So that's the recommendation here. The second last tip is find a study buddy. Sorry. I do think this is really important. let me give you an example, and then I'll come back to this idea. So years ago, I was in Chile to deliver this award to a professor in Santiago, and this lady always publishes in this journal at Emerald, and normally she's recognized by the relevance of her research. And then we were having this really nice tea, and I said, Professor, how come you are so successful in publishing in this journal and also in being awarded so many times? And then she said, you know, Andre, um, I am a senior professor. I am about to retire now, but what we do is we do have this community of friends, international friends. What we do is this: we exchange our articles among us, and we kind of have this process of peer review among us. But we are really, really hard on ourselves, right? So if I send my article to a friend, this friend will do a kind of peer review for me, but they won't say, oh, it's just great, just submit your article to any journal. They will really do a hard time on me, but that's really helpful. I will do the amendments, I will change my article, and then I'll submit this to a journal. So we do this, and this is helpful. We will be much luckier, let's say. But there are three possible answers in general when you receive an answer from a journal, right? Number one, rejection. We don't want this. But there are two possible general answers from a journal. One, accepted with major revisions, many changes, and the last one is accepted with minor revisions. So normally we get the third answer, which is acceptance with not so many changes, because we 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 did the peer review process among us, right? So that's my recommendation. So the Find a Study Buddy works not only for the PhD roles. This applies for those that are undergoing their master programs, PhD programs. If you want to submit your thesis, you'll probably need a colleague to read them for you, because after you write one, two times, by the third time you won't see your own mistakes, right? That's why it's important to have a friend to do this kind of peer review for you. But this also applies for papers that we want to submit to a journal, right? Nowadays it's very common to have not only one author but many authors by paper. So I do understand everyone is doing this by this time, but I still think it's a good point to comment here. And finally, at the last point, I do encourage you to visit our For Authors pages. You see this and much more content, much more. Obviously, for this hour, we don't have enough time to discuss everything, but I do hope this is a good guide for you to get to see more. And I do encourage you to not only visit Emerald's website, but the university's website, other publishers' websites, to get more information about how to be more successful in publishing in good journals, right? Let me move on here. Um, I hope a few of you will understand this picture. One of the tips that this author from those 100 PhD rules share is play snakes and ladders. If you do know this game, you are probably as old as I am. This was very common in Brazil. And what she says is, publishing is just like playing snakes and ladders. Sometimes you get published, but many times you get rejected. Just accept it's the normal process. Don't get mad if you were rejected. And I can share with you, I have been in so many sessions throughout those 7 years at Emerald. I remember to meet the editor sessions. One of the editors, and there was a lady from the UK. Her session was entitled "Patience, Patience, Patience." But I do remember another one, and the speaker had this: a published author is certainly a rejected author, right? So uh, sometimes you will be up, sometimes you will be down. It's normal. Just accept it. If you are rejected, change your paper and try to publish it again, being on the same journal or on a different journal, right? Um, I also want to share with you that Emerald is part of this really interesting SDG Publishers Compact group. It's a group of publishers committed to the SDGs. If you want to know more about it, do visit our website. Uh, it, it what does it mean? It means that we are committed to so many international initiatives that I'm sharing here with you. So, for instance, on the right-hand side, it says, how can we make editorial boards more diverse? So topics like gender, equality, diversity, also education. This session is part of our commitment to education worldwide. It's my actually personal mission at Emerald to share anything we can to our communities, and I hope this session is really interesting and helpful for all of us. Finally, I want to share that we do have this web page online where we do publish freely content about the COVID. I know we are approaching the end of the pandemic, but if you still want to know more about what we have been publishing recently, do visit Emerald's website. And I want to thank you for your patience. I hope my voice was okay. I am still recovering. And if we have any questions, I am very happy to hear from you. Matilde, not sure if we have any questions from the audience.
We do not have any questions at this point. I assume in case somebody finds that they did have a question towards what you asked, they can put it in the chat box, and once we finish the session, we can look into it. Does that sound right?
It sounds okay to me. Many thanks, Matilde. So I'll pass it to you, and I'll make Petra a presenter.
Thank you very much, Andre. That was really interesting. Petra, now the floor is yours.
Okay, here I am.
Thank you.
All right, so good morning, everyone, again. And thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing with us how to get published. And I am going to share now from this point on. The assumption is that you have published. And normally when you have published, you get this feeling, you know, of accomplishment, because as Andrew would have mentioned, there is, once you are a published author or a published writer, you are a person who have been rejected as well. And it is a good feeling to know that you have published. But the question is, in this session, so I have published, what next? The question now is that the end of the process and I just move on to other publications? So I want to share with you some considerations in this session. Do you have a role to play now that you have published in getting your work to the audience for which it was intended, for whom it was intended? And if so, why do you need to do so anyway? And if you need to get it to the audience for which it was intended, what technologies should you use? Now, if any of these questions or related questions entered your mind when you saw this webinar advertised, then definitely this presentation will be for you. So I'll give you some of the session's objectives. The truth is that while you are communicating your research, it may involve increased citation. And this is what you really want as academics who are here. You want increased citations. But this session I'm doing with you is not solely about citations. It is geared towards encouraging you to engage and get involved in the process of communicating information about your published works to various publics by utilizing technology. Additionally, for the purposes of this session, I want to let you know that the synonyms, it is labeled Advertise Your Research with Technology. But just for this presentation, some synonyms for advertise would be market, communicate, and promote. So when I say advertise your research with technology, I mean promote it, communicate it, market it, right? Now, the main question, the assumption now, Andre, as we said, we are sharing both considerations for getting published and guides to getting published, as well as beyond the publication process. So my session assumes that you have already published your research. So I'm assuming the next question is, what next? I have published. So in this regard, I'll provide reasons you need to communicate your research. I will give you considerations for choosing technologies to communicate your research. I will give you factors to consider in assigning keywords to your research. And I will provide a list of technological tools that you can use to communicate your research, right? So Andre, I'll go with the first poll now. So just to get an idea of the demographics, Andre is going to post a poll on the screen, and all you need to do is select whether you agree or disagree, right? The publisher is solely responsible for communicating your research. Agree or disagree? Just select one, about 1 minute. We should do that. And Andre, you can share the results of the poll when you close it. We give them 1 minute to answer, and we share the results. Right, is the minute up by now? All right, so the minute is up. What do we post the results? Right, so 85% disagreed, and I'm glad, because for the 15% who agree, we will try to swing you over to the 85% who disagreed, because while the publisher may have published you, and the publisher, by virtue of ranking and by virtue of marketing and by virtue of access, being on different platforms and being visible, while your research will be communicated through the avenue provided by the publisher, you are also responsible for communicating. So for the 15%, and to reinforce the 85%, the question is, why should you promote your research? That would have been the question asked by the 15%. Now, one of the major reasons for promoting your research, you would appreciate as academics, is the need to show evidence of the impact, that is the reach and the influence of your work. Here are some questions to consider to show evidence of the reach and the impact and the influence, right? You also want to channel your research to relevant audiences. So here are the questions. Is your research reaching the intended audience? 1. Are researchers other than those it was intended for viewing, downloading, citing, and accessing your work? Additionally, do you need to communicate your research in order to network with other researchers? The answer is yes. Andrew would have mentioned, conferences and other events and persons you would want to network with. Networking is critical. Networking with researchers and stakeholders in your specific area of research. This is critical for visibility, for discoverability, and also to facilitate retrievability. Additionally, you are the best person to market your research. I always tell persons, as manager and editor, I say, you know your research. You can portion your research into the pieces for stakeholders to access. What do I mean by that? Let me use some images, an image of a package. You can package your research. How do you package your research? You can package it in images, in videos, in podcasts, in audios. And these packages now can be distributed to the user, the stakeholder, the student, the patron, the public, the parent, the masses, the policymaker, the official. In other words, you want them to find your research in a plethora of formats, not just in the journal. And then, after packaging your research, you want to distribute it via a number of technological tools. These tools may be blogs, social media tools, YouTube, Facebook, WhatsApp, and a number of tool websites, discussion groups, forums, etc. And of course, you will want to use the appropriate hashtags so that your research can be discovered and you can also follow other persons in your area. So, of course, this now begs the question, based on the title and caption in the banner, which is, now which technology should I use to do this? So before I identify the technologies, here are some considerations. I repeat these questions. Who is the intended audience? Who, when you were writing your research, which audience were you thinking of? Who did you want it to reach? Researchers, scholars, students, practitioners, leaders in government, policymakers, communities. Who is the intended audience? The next question is, where is the audience located? Are they online? And if they're online, where? Then the question is, now which technology will best match the audience? When we are, as librarians, when we are doing library literacy sessions with students, well, when I'm doing it, I will normally tell them, you need to match your information resource to your information need. What do you need? Then which resource will get you that? So similarly, for you as a researcher, or as a writer, what you need to ask yourself is, who is my audience? And which technological tool will channel my work, which I have packaged in a particular format, to this audience? In what format is it packaged? As I mentioned before, image, video, audio. How is it packaged? Now, Rankin 2020, I found it particularly useful. I want to read something she said, which I found was critical. She said, although your research benefits a field of knowledge, your findings from your research need to be shared widely and effectively if they are to benefit our rapidly changing world. Sharing your findings outside of the walls of your organization serves the field and provides you with validation beyond your immediate work environment. So it's not just about sharing it among your colleagues within your organization or your university, but getting it to the publics for which it was intended. You know, we have moved away from the ivory tower concept of the university, and we want our research to impact where it matters. By sharing beyond common research communities, or I call silos, you know, sharing only with other researchers, your work can reach varied audiences. And guess what? It will improve decision making. Policies, studies, and practices on an expanded scale. So let me go now to keywords which are critical for discoverability. I'm going to switch roles here. So I'm going to switch into a librarian mode here to give you an idea of what students and patrons are told when they are looking for research, which may be your research, right? So I'm moving from that of researcher to that of the end user, and I'm taking on the role of the intermediary, the librarian, who is the go-between, who is the middle person, and I'm drawing on my 20 years experience in the library field. So we tell users, patrons, looking for an article is like looking for a needle in a haystack, because you know there are millions of articles, there are millions of journals. When you go to database providers, they provide access to thousands and thousands of articles. So when you are looking for that one specific article, it's like looking for a needle in a haystack. How can users get it? You may be thinking, as we tell the students, the title of the research. But yes, except your lecturer or your supervisor or your colleague sends you it, or except you see it in the list of references at the end of the book or a journal review or some other source that the user may not know exists, then how will they get it? They will do a literature search, which Andre spoke about. Now, when you do your literature search, you want, let me switch back to you now. When that student does a literature search, you want your material to factor in and to come into that search. How is that possible? That is only possible if appropriate keywords are assigned to it. So when the student stumbles upon your research in the form of a citation or a video or a podcast, or in whichever of these little packages you may have put it in, a YouTube video, a podcast here, an audio there, a script there, a little review there, a reflection here. When they stumble upon that, they would say, I want to get the full text of this. So this is why it's so critical to advertise with technologies, and it is also critical to assign keywords, because when they stumble upon it, based on how you advertise it, they will now need to go down into the keywords to pull the full text of your paper. And once it surfaces, they will go after it. So keywords, of course, are the terms you use to assign to facilitate retrievability. These are the three major factors I want you to remember: the relevance, the search volume, and the user intent. What do we mean by relevance? Different search engines and different providers will rank relevance differently. So sometimes it's good to see how keywords are indexed, how journals, how search engines are indexed, so you will know what relevance means or which search they send first in your list of hits. When we talk relevance, ESAN 2022 says it effective keywords give accurate representation of your publication and improves relevance. So you want it to appear in the first 10 or the first 20 or the first 30 or the first 100, as the case may be. Your keywords must be effective. Search volume. How many times a certain keyword is searched within a defined time frame, according to Faraguli? She posits that a minimum of 100 to about 1,000 searches per month may be a good hit in terms of determining an appropriate search volume. However, consider this: using rarely searched keywords mean people may not find your content. On the other hand, using keywords with extremely high search volume means you could be stuck competing with larger sites because others have used that. So you want to play a balancing act in terms of assigning your keywords based on the search volumes. You would see the search is yielding 100. I'm going to use that keyword because when I use that keyword, a lot of it's coming up. So my own must come up. Yes, it will come up, but it will be lost among others. So play a balancing act in assigning keywords. The user intent, the primary goal a user has when searching a query. In other words, think like the user who may want to access your research in assigning your keywords. So having said that, I'm going to send you a poll. right? So Andrew, could you launch poll number 2 and then poll number 3? So we can have an idea of if you have been. So 2 minutes, 1 minute for poll number 2 and another minute for poll number 3. So I'm moving Andre's timing to see when the minute has gone so we can go to the other poll. And we will get the results for poll number 2 and then we will go with poll number 3. I think a minute has gone, I'm not sure. I forgot to time it. Right, poll number 2, and let's see the results for poll number 2 before we go to poll number 3. You can select as many options as you need to, okay? So we go to poll number 2 and 3. I have it back to front. Okay, I think a minute has gone. I think 2 minutes have gone, so we can share the results of the poll. Okay, so we see here that 63% have used Google Scholar, 68% have used Researchgate, 33% have used UV Scholar, 30% have used ORCID, 10% have used UV Space. Just allow me to take note of that for my. So we have UV Scholar 33, UV Space 10, ORCID 30, but we have the 60s for Google Scholar and Researchgate 60s. Can we see for the other one? I'm deliberately taking note of these for my as I go ahead, right? So we have Facebook 40, IG 24, LinkedIn 55, Twitter 14, and YouTube. Interestingly, I did not focus on YouTube in this presentation because I assumed a number of persons have been using YouTube, but they showed me wrong. So even though I don't have YouTube in the slides, I'll mention YouTube. All right, thank you so much for sharing. So this certainly validates what I am going to share with you. So UV Space and UV Scholar, we have 33 and 10%. Now, for the purposes of this presentation, let me share with you technologies, the definition of technologies for this presentation. I'm looking at social media and networking platforms, right? Social media platforms and social networking platforms. I will share select social media platforms like blogs, social networking sites, microblogging, and social media sites. Now, because this is a short session, I won't go into how to use them. That, of course, will be the focus of another session. And my list will not be exhaustive. So my list, interestingly, comprise those that are not heavily utilized. So I feel vindicated in deliberately choosing those that I think persons will not use, but which can be very useful in advertising research. According to Rankin, again, the reality of our world is that the way people get their information has changed in substantial ways. We have to appreciate that the internet in particular has opened countless new channels to reach and help others with your findings. I want to share some statistics that she gleaned from Elsevier in 2018. They said scholarly articles, they cited scholarly articles receiving 12,000 new mentions across social media news and blogs on a daily basis. Let me say that again. 12,000 new articles receiving mentions across social media, news and blogs on a daily basis. That's good for discoverability, right? She broke it down to one mention every 7 seconds. And a mention draws persons to your research, and they will go searching it by keywords or title or by your name, which makes discoverability and retrievability even greater. So I want to highlight 3 networking tools, and then I'll highlight some media tools, right? So I'm going to highlight 3 social networking tools. 2 are available to researchers right here at the UE. So of course I'm on the UE platform, and I have a number of persons from UE here. So I'm giving a little UE bias. You can give me that. So to the researchers at UE, you have UE Space and UE Scholar. The third one I would share is Researchgate. These tools allow for these social networking tools, allow for the promotion of research and for connections in the scholarly community. So UE Space is the institutional repository of the UE. UE Scholar is a searchable experts and research networking database, and Researchgate is a social networking platform that allows researchers to connect, collaborate, and to share research topics. So let's look at UE Space, the institutional repository of the UE. Content in UE Space is continuously indexed by Google and Bing. Each item submitted to UE Space is given a unique URL, and this makes it easy to distribute to other researchers. UE Space allows researchers to build faculty pages that you can monitor, highlight your research, and add your research. UE Space also allows researchers, you, the faculty or the researcher, to track your content views, and content views can share in terms of the reach and the visibility, content views, and of course it is web accessible. And in UE Space, research can be packaged in multiple formats: audio, video, images, text, even data sets. And the reach of UE Space is international. For persons not assigned to UE, an institutional repository is a great tool to hold the scholarly output of your institution. So if you don't have an institutional repository, you may want to go back to your administrators and whoever and discuss with them the possibility of having an institutional repository to harness and hold the scholarly output of your institution. Then you have UE Scholar. What are the benefits to researchers? UE Scholar is a centralized database of biodata and other information. What information? Research interest, research activity, public service, consultancies, education, training, teaching activities, awards, grants and funding, and social media, with also a global reach. UE Space is searchable, a searchable expert research networking database, as I would have mentioned. It provides open access to scholarly works of the University of the West Indies community, including some full-text publications. Of course, with copyright borne in mind. It promotes research visibility and discoverability to local, regional, and global communities. It increases access to research data, and it increases funding opportunities because data is often required by funding agencies, and this data will be stored in the UE Scholar community as well. So let me go to Researchgate. Researchgate is a social networking platform that consists of 20 million researchers in over 190 countries. It facilitates collaboration, sharing, and connection between researchers who can connect on common areas of interest. Of course, I don't have to go much into Researchgate because let me see here how many of you, the majority were into Researchgate. That percentage was in the 60s. So I don't have to say much about Researchgate, right? And of course, what I will say about Researchgate is when you are using Researchgate, and I've been asked this question, consider copyright issues. If you are posting post preprints or the last draft before you send for publication, After research has been published, post the abstract with a link to where the publication is stored. And of course, consider the copyright and consider contractual elements and so on with the particular publisher that you would have published with. I wouldn't say much on Researchgate because 60% of you all are into Researchgate. So let me go to blogs. Let me see what percentage of you utilize blogs. Oh, I didn't put blogs. I should probably run a quick poll, but it's too late now. Start a blog to promote your research, to share. What you would share in your blog is not your full research, of course. It's a social network platform. Share features, share excerpts, share information about select portion of your research. You can write summaries, you can write articles, you can write stories about your research, you can share reflections on your research journey. And with all of these, you want to provide links to your research. And of course, very important, contact experts and other scholars and researchers in your field who are also blogging, so you can expand your reach and you can get some visibility. Here are some free web hosting software. I thank Rankin who provided this in one of her sessions I attended, and she told us we can share it widely. So you have Blogger, you have Google, Jimdo, you have Squarespace, Wix, WordPress is a popular one, and Yola. So these are some blogging, some web hosting software. Based on your preference, you can choose either one of them so that if you are interested in blogging. But blogging is also, as I mentioned, another way for discoverability and for visibility. Let's go to some general social media platforms. Social media is a computer-based technology. Let me give you a definition. A computer-based technology that facilitates the sharing of ideas, thoughts, and information. Through what? The building of virtual networks and communities. Here are the stats. There are more than 4.5 billion social media users around the world. The largest social media networks include Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, TikTok. Of course, I would have got this by Dollar Hyde, and that would be cited in my reference. So what I'm positing to you today is to harness the power of social media to increase your reach. I stress again, you are not posting your paper on social media, but you are packaging little segments of it so that persons will now find your paper wherever it is located. This is for retrievability, discoverability, and visibility, which is necessary if you want to increase your citations, right? Harness the power of social media to increase your reach. Talk about your paper so persons can see it, know it, and cite it. Post on social media accounts and use relevant hashtags to channel your research. Utilize the analytics for views, etc. It will tell you views and reach, so that will tell you if your research is getting out or not, if you need to beef up or switch to another social media platform. Now, I chose these platforms because of their size, their popularity, and their ability to connect researchers with both the public and scholarly community. And I am glad I chose these because based on the poll, you have not really been using these much. So I'm hoping at the end of this session, you will experiment with it and see if it can work for you. So when we look at Facebook and Instagram tend to have high engagement. They are most used. Instagram is growing fast. They allow you to post new publication details or information about featured publications in any of the formats I mentioned earlier. Remember the audio, the video, the images, the text, and so on. You can also follow hashtags to monitor trends, interests, groups, or persons. And you can update followers and contacts with your latest suit. So you can let them know that you just published, as the case may be. And of course, followers will share with followers and that sort of thing. So you have social media. The other one is LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a social network. It's the largest professional networking site. Now, some persons call LinkedIn social media. So if you go online, you would see there is the ongoing debate: is LinkedIn social media, or is it social networking? Either or, it has a strong professional reputation, and you can use it to share updates on your research or your paper in a specific group or publicly. So you have an option in a specific group of persons with similar interests or publicly. That's your choice. And in LinkedIn, you can provide link. If you have created a blog, you can provide links to your blogs, links to your articles where it is stored, link to your website. If you have a website, you can provide links, and of course, you can share all your updates. Then there is Twitter. How many of you use Twitter? It was very low. I was surprised, 14%. But I can understand why, because it is so difficult to get followers on Twitter. So I can understand why persons kind of stay away from Twitter. But you can tweet your latest publication and research, your blog, your conference presentation, and more. Link it to your work in tweets. But here is what you do. Follow. If you want to expand your reach on Twitter, it will take some time. Follow colleagues and key researchers in your discipline who are on Twitter. They may have an interest in sharing your works, and that would be a big break for you. So look for persons who may have a large following, follow them, and perhaps they may share your work. Of course, nothing is wrong with experimenting with these platforms. If they work, go for it. If they don't, try another one. But the important thing is discoverability, visibility, and retrievability. And then I want to share on, you may wonder, so what's the big thing? Here is the altmetric displayed in Emerald. You have blogs and tweets. So if you look here, you would see blogs and you would see Twitter, persons who would have tweeted different articles, and there are also different blogs. I can't click on it, but you can look at, do a search on Emerald's platform, and you would see that they are actually including blogs and tweets and so on into their altmetrics, right? So yes, it's all becoming part of the scholarly conversation. It's all becoming part, and there are a number of papers by scholars on the impact of whether Twitter, tweeting, the impact of social media on discoverability and so on. What you can do after this session, you can go and see what the scholars are saying about the utilization of these modes, social networking sites and social media sites, in terms of discoverability, retrievability, impact and reach, and so on. So I end here. I was having so much fun, I almost forgot I need to give you time for questions. So I end as I began. You need to, of course, advertise your research with technology. And then as I began, I shared with you why you should communicate your research. Of course, advertise and communicate, promote, marketing, I use them synonymously. I provided to you considerations in choosing the technologies, your audience, where they are located, and so on. I outlined factors to be considered in assigning keywords in terms of relevance and search volumes and user intent. I shared that with you. And I also provided technologies, which I interpreted in the captioned topic. Technologies interpreted to mean social media and social networking sites and platforms that you can use to communicate your research. So as I leave you, I want to challenge you or encourage you to promote, market, communicate, advertise. Don't wait for the publisher to do it. Advertise, promote, market, and communicate your research with technologies. And of course, this will allow for you visibility, discoverability, and retrieve it. Don't shy away from it. Experiment with it. It just might work for you. And of course, it may yield for you what you want, what I didn't stress, but it would yield the necessary impact and citations, which may go towards your promotion, your tenure, and probably a funding opportunities. So these would have been the sources that I consulted, and I turn you back over to Mathilde as we go into the discussion forum, if there are any questions.
Yes, we do have a couple of questions. Here, the first one, would presenting one's research on certain, say, cool social media platforms diminish its quality within the academic circle?
Okay, that's a good question, but what is suggested is not that you present the research on the platform. What you are doing is basically giving portions of it. In other words, you know, when you have like a trailer, you don't put the full movie, you put a trailer to stir interest. So it will not diminish the quality of the research. However, TikTok, that's a debate, and of course there is literature on it, there was a research done, and they mentioned TikTok as a platform where, interestingly, a number of scholars, remember, you are not putting your entire research, you are putting little portions to attract persons, like little tidbits. They said if you put it on TikTok, bear in mind, and I did not go into that one because that one I felt TikTok, they may take it and turn it into humor because, you know, that's the aim of TikTok. But on the social media platforms that I suggested, it will not diminish your research. It will actually draw attention to your research, but your research will be housed in the repository or in the journal. Your research will not be housed on the social media platform. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Mathilde, can I add just a quick comment on Petra's? Because
yes, of course.
Petra, I believe you and the community know Kudos. Grow Kudos is the website. It's a company, and I know that many researchers at Emerald, but I believe in many other journals, institutions, publishers, etc., do use them. I know some statistics from Kudos, some authors at Emerald that use that tool, they do get 23% more downloads on their original articles. But Kudos, just as Petra mentioned, is just another tool for you to promote your research. Obviously, they will not use the very same text. I mean, scientific, hard, and difficult to read, let's say, right? They want you to use more short words, just like Twitter, but at the end, the original articles do get more downloaded. So I think it's just another way for us and another tool for us to promote our original research. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Andre. So, and I'm glad you mentioned as well that the persons who have used it got more citations. That's very critical. And you emphasize the fact that you're not putting the entire research, just packaging it, a little summary, a little piece, you know. Yeah. Because I'm in literature, I like to use analogies. And it's like you go into a supermarket and they give you a little taste of a product they want you to buy. They don't give you the entire product, they just give you a little taste. That taste is for you to go looking for it. It's the same principle you can apply to the use of social media and your research. You just give a little taste so that person's to go looking for it. And with appropriate keywords, they would find it.
Thank you. We have another question. In order to access UE Schooler, I need to log in. Do external researchers need to log in or create an account?
That's a good question. External researchers will be able to access the material in Unispace, but they won't be able to log because it's an institutional repository. but they would be able to access the research. So you can search as an external researcher, you can search UWI Space. Yeah, it's UWI Space, the question came on, right? Not UWI Scholar.
Okay, I think that answered the question. Also, regarding the Scholar, it would be helpful for training sessions to be conducted in the use of UWI Scholar and UWI Space. Although I have registered on these sites, I have not done anything with them because I have not been taught how to. This is the case for most Cave Hill lecturers.
Okay, so thank you for that. And I did warn the UWI Scholar and UWI Space administrator that I would expect after this session persons will ask for training. So I'm going to, if you can probably, I'm going to put, I think I got permission to put the person you should contact in the chat. Masha. You can email Matilda, you can probably take it and share it for me because I just realized I didn't click everyone. So if you can share that contact for me. So persons in the UWI community who would like to get training in the use of UWI Scholar and UWI Space, you can contact Masha Winter. Persons in the School of Education, well, I will do that for you. That's the school I'm assigned to, and I have responsibility for the repository of the material of the School of Education in UWI Space. So I can work with you. That's the School of Education. Go ahead, Matilda.
Okay, we will share you the contact to get that shared. Now I have one more, and this is more for the discussion. I completely agree that as researchers, we should be responsible for sharing research information. However, scientists are particularly poor at communicating. Typically, we communicate in a precise manner. Scientific communication, as an example, technical report includes a lengthy background and then describes the methods and process used with great precision. It is not until the very end of the document that results or conclusions are reported. Communicating to other audiences, as example, policy. Now my questions are, sorry. Sorry, it seems my screen is like jumping back and forth. I will try and find where I left off. It is not until the very end of the document that results or conclusions are reported. Communicating to other audiences, as example, policymakers, reverse this approach. There are times that I feel we need the support of communication specialists to appropriately communicate or research and messages. You want to comment on that one?
Can I throw that one to Andrew?
Thank you, and thank you for the question. I do agree with the sentiment, right? I think most of us feel the same. I know that Emerald, because Emerald was founded by a group of professors, researchers, but most of them also were practitioners and consultants in the market, and many of them were actually from the engineering subject area. I think most of them also felt the need that the research published should have a meaning for executives. But that was 50 years ago. Now, as the word is, I feel that we do have many journals that are meant for, let's say, researchers only. And I think it's fine. Emerald does have journals that try to serve both sides. I think it's fine. But there are also journals that want to publish only digested content, which is also fine. we do have the three of them. Some publishers will focus on just one type of journal, which is also fine. We actually had a sister company in the past that would digest articles for executives. I think there was not much appetite for that. That's my personal feeling. And I think it's because the researchers still want very, very deep scientific journals. That's what I feel. Most of the researchers, professors in the community. Why? Because that's what they want, what they need. They want really, really rocket science, develop deep research methods because they want that, and it's okay, right? I think there's also this need of us trying to digest content. So the community, I mean normal people, let's say, understand what we are trying to publish. One of the slides I shared was the SDG Publishers Compact, and Emerald being part of this group of publishers. One of the concerns we do have is that the science we publish gets translated for the normal public. One of the projects we are working on at this moment, this very moment, is indigenous voices. In the past, we were working especially with female voices because we want to discuss this idea of equality, diversity in academia. And now, at the moment, we're discussing about this. Right, so we are approaching indigenous communities and trying to give them voice in terms of, are you guys underrepresented? Can we support you? Can we publish more research on this topic? Right. I think any effort on those directions, I mean, equality, diversity, inclusion is important. In our case, and finally, try to answer your question, and thank you again for raising this. If you want to publish on Emerald, as I said, on our structured abstract, there's also this part which says practical implications, social implications. That's the way we have found to try to show people, the communities, how your research can be translated into the real world with a possible practical implication, right? So I think that's the small answer we can give to the community, and a possibility for us to be more, let's say, tangible.
Thank you, Andre. We have another question. What about using the print, radio, and television to promote your work? An organization that I once worked for created press releases for all research that was conducted. They announced to all media sources which research they would be sharing in the next week on each Friday, made the researchers available for interviews, and trained the researchers on how to be interviewed and be cited.
Definitely. That's the full question? I just want to make sure I didn't cut. Is that the question?
Yes. So, well, yeah, more like a statement. What do you think about the print, radio, and television?
I fully endorse and support, because as I mentioned before, the format, there isn't an exhaustive list in terms of the formats you may package your research in and the communication channels that you may use. And certainly the major consideration would be, who is the audience, where is the audience located, and how can you get it to the audience for which your research was intended, or the audience that needs to be impacted by your research. So if print, media, and television is the channel to get a specific audience for which your research was intended, then definitely the list of communications channels, the list isn't exhaustive at all. So whatever channel can be used to get to your audience, you package your research or in different formats or in different snippets, excerpts, summaries, reflections, high points, recommendation, data sets. You package it in whatever format the audience can digest and regurgitate. So it's not just about packaging your research and say, I did this. You want the audience to be able to digest it and apply it so that it isn't just a number in terms of citation, but it actually makes an impact which your research would have been done to.
Okay, thank you. Here another suggestion. What about translating your work into text and graphics that are easy to understand by other researchers, policymakers, government, and the general public?
Definitely, you added to the presentation by saying that. Yes, and you know, when you look at, I was listening to a scholarly debate recently, and they were mentioning that as much as you as a researcher, you're in a particular subject area, and there are certain terms you would use among your colleagues because your genre should reflect your area and so on. You should also be able to communicate that, Andrew would have mentioned it, in simple terms for the public that you may want it to reach as well. So you should be able to operate, you know, at both levels and to find a balance or which audience it is. You should be able to distribute and package your research in the language or in the format or in the, as you mentioned, the person mentioned, text and so on, that the audience can. So yes, you added to my research. You added to my presentation with that comment. Thank you.
Also, another recommendation, using the conversation to publicize your research.
Definitely. Conversation, discussion forums, you know, panels, community, depending on the audience, definitely. Community, scholars, students, government, policymakers, whoever the audience is. Yes, agreed.
Great, thank you. About Kudos, can you provide a website for it, Andre? I think that would be for you.
Sure, Matilde. I just shared the link on the chat window.
Okay, great. Sorry, I only have one window open at the time. Okay, and then we have one more question. What is the best way of researchers sharing their work with policymakers, government officials, and politicians? Any suggestions?
Andrea, you waiting for me to answer that, right? Yes, right, what COVID-19 did, well, for me personally, what COVID-19 did was kicked everyone into technology mode. Whether you liked it or not, you had to get into the technology mode. And what I've been realizing, well, in the Caribbean, you know, a lot of our government information and so on used to be stored in print formats. But I've noted that a number of government ministries are now online. So I would encourage persons, the same how you package it in audio or video. I didn't mention YouTube. YouTube is also a great tool. Remember, I said I didn't mention YouTube because I assumed persons were using YouTube. But since the percentage was, what, about 14%, I will encourage you, once you have a Google account, you have a YouTube channel, activate your YouTube channel. You can also post videos and send links. And get your research on, well, not your full research again, but the different formats of your research on government websites. And, oh, I also forgot to mention, another means of discoverability is email. At the end of your email, put your featured publication or put your most recent publication. That is a link. So if you are working with government officials and you are communicating to them in email, at the end, by your complimentary close in that bar below there, you put your featured publication, or you put the publication you would want them to click on, right? That's just one aspect. And you can also, government websites, a lot of persons in administration, they have their Twitter account, follow them on Twitter, you know, that's what I talk about, because based on the field you are in, then these practitioners are really within your network, because your research is geared to these practitioners. So find out where they are. What are the hashtags that would lead you to them? What networks they operate in? Where are they? Are they on LinkedIn? Then join their professional network. In other words, whether government official or scholars, what social networking allows us to do is to build a community of networkers, build a community of scholars within your particular subject area. And once you build this community, you can impact the audience, whether it's government or policymakers, because you are in their network. So get into their networks based on their different social media handles and by your appropriate hashtags and so on. Hope I answered. Andrew, you wanted to add anything to it?
Yes, thank you, Petra. I think it's important to understand the differences in terms of nature of each target. Let me share one great example, two great examples. I know this professor here in São Paulo who does consultancy, and based on that, he will write a teaching case of the company, but also whenever possible, he will also write a research article on this company. Well, the research article will be more focused on the theory, but whenever possible, he will write the research article and make a version of a teaching case whenever possible, right? But I do understand it takes a lot of time and effort to do this. It's really a difficult task. But what he thinks is, well, I'm doing the consultancy and it's a company, why not write a teaching case? And if I can apply this to the theory, it's great, right? So from his perspective, he's saving time. Why should I why not to do both based on the same case, let's say? And there is this other lady from South Brazil, and she researches in public management. And I know that she works with the mayor in her city, and she must deliver some projects to the mayor. But whenever she presents, she must also kind of deliver a trade-off, right? Because the politicians do want to know what are the benefits of the project, but at the end, it's also a matter of, okay, so what can I get in exchange if I deliver this? Will I get more votes? Will I keep my position? Can I promote this to the public so the public will love me as the mayor, right? And I don't want to get to the point if it's right or wrong, because I don't think it's the discussion, but to understand the very nature of every target, of every niche. Because if we as people want to be successful, we need to understand the needs and wants of each public. The executive does not need to know the methodology behind a research article, but the researchers do. But so I think that would be my comment here. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one more question. I think this would go for you, Andre. How would you compare Kudos with academia.edu?
Thank you. I hope I'll be able to answer this one. As Petra showed us, there are many tools available for the research community. I understand that Kudos is like a hub of hubs. You can add academia, Researchgate, and other tools into Kudos, and then from Kudos you kind of spam through them all. So I think it's an interesting tool. Just one more comment, and I think it's really nice. We would think that only the younger researchers or people that are starting to publish would use Kudos, but from what I know from Emerald is that the most experienced and successful authors at Emerald do use Kudos. So they actually do get more downloaded and cited, which is interesting.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, that was the last question, but I am sorry I did not have access to the questions for Andres' part. So I did not mention the questions we had received. Andre did return with most of you, but I think it would be appropriate to mention the questions we had and do it also here in live since we still have a little time left. We have a question on what is a good impact factor?
Thank you, Matilde. And thanks for the question. The answer is that there is no pattern in terms of impact factors, figures. Most of Emerald journals are in social sciences, mainly business. In business, if you get an impact factor, that's amazing. If your impact factor is above 1, excellent. If it's above 3 or 4, it's just superb. There are not many journals with impact factors and with impact factors above 1, 2, or 3. But if you go to STEM, sciences, maths, I know there are journals with impact factors above 20, 30, 40, right? So it will really depend on your subject area. So my final recommendation is do talk to your peers, your colleagues, try to know who are the most relevant journals in your area, and then you probably get to understand what is a good impact factor to you.
Thank you, Andre. Also, we have a question here asking for suggestions about post-PhD budding scholar groups. Is there anywhere you can find different groups and how to join? How would you recommend doing that, Andre?
Thank you. Good question, and I think it's one of the most important, at least from my perspective, because I really believe it's important to be part of communities in terms of knowing who are tweeting, who are sharing ideas, as Petra said, being part of conversations. My only recommendation is really for you to, whenever possible, attend those conferences as I shared in my presentation, because that's a very common question, and I don't think you will find those lists on Google Search, on Yahoo. It's just difficult. The easiest way is to really be part of seminars, colloquias, conferences, and then try to connect to those people. One way to do this as well is to read good databases. Probably at the University of West Indies, you all have access to good journals, not only Emerald, but any other good journals. Try to see who are the authors being published, if they are attending conferences. If you can attend those conferences, nice. If you cannot, why not to send them an email? I know that many colleagues here in Latin America, once I was talking to this colleague from Colombia, and he was saying, you know, Andre, we speak Spanish, and we try to connect with colleagues in Spain because language helps, and then we will invite them to co-author with us or to talk to them, to see their sessions in a conference, and then we'll just be friends. And then be more successful in publishing in any outlet possible. And so that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it kind of goes together with the social medias that you use to publish. You get to follow people who are related to, and that way you can probably get the buddying as mentioned. I have one other question. Would you recommend applying to journals based on region?
That's an interesting question. Let me share a little bit about the requirements here in Brazil. So if I am a professor or a PhD student, I will be asked to publish in certain journals, normally indexed either on Scopus or in the Web of Science. That's the requirement. If that journal is in Brazil or in the Caribbean or in China, it doesn't matter. But obviously, some journals do have interest in regional research. If you publish, or if I publish in a journal based in Brazil or in China, but this journal is still indexed, it's all right. So that would be my answer. But I do remember I was in a conference, and it was a conference in international business, and the comment was really interesting because it was a panel, and it was, I think, 3 or 4 editors-in-chief of the very best international business conferences, and they were saying, 20 years ago it was fine for you to compare to companies in Brazil, but now you need to compare 3 different countries and analyze the companies, etc. So the science is evolving, it's becoming more difficult, right? So at the end, I think it's still required from authors, readers like us, to understand what the journals are publishing at the moment, what the requirements are, what the conversation really is, and we need to understand that and then try to help this conversation, add something new, something innovative, and then try to publish in those outlets. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I think this could be for any of you. What is your advice for someone outside of academia looking to publish in an academic journal?
I can start, Petra.
Yes, go ahead.
There is one thing which is really interesting about Emerald. You don't need any academic degree to publish at Emerald. If your article is just good, and if the editors and reviewers like them, it will be published. I'm sharing this because I know here in Brazil, in a few countries, you would need a doctoral degree to get published. It's not required at Emerald. You only need to get a good paper, right? But now, if you are outside of academia and you want to publish in a very deep, let's say, really academic outlet journal, you probably need to understand the conversation, the methods, right? The principles to get published in the journal don't change. You still need to understand the conversation that's being dealt behind that given journal, right? So my advice is find where you want to publish. Understand the conversation. Who are the authors that are being published and cited? Try to understand that, and then submit your innovative idea, and then probably you'll be more successful. Thank you.
Endorsed. And also remember what was mentioned by Andrew earlier in terms of published authors are rejected authors. So and we are looking at published scholarly authors. So it is even more difficult, if it is that difficult for a scholar to get published in a scholarly journal, then as a non-scholar, except you know the methods and the theories and you know the scholarly environment and how to engage the scholarly communication, except you know that, or you have some sort of experience behind you with that, you will want to align yourself, networking again, outside, whether online or outside. You will want to align yourself to an expert or scholar in the area so that you can get published. If you are doing research, you will need to know something about research to publish or to write research. So I would say align yourself to a scholar, align yourself to someone, do courses, get into the scholarly environment, because you can be published in an environment that is not scholarly, because publishing is wide. But today we are having a scholarly communication, and if you want to get published in an environment like this, I would say align yourself to a scholar and get some courses done and so on. Don't just jump into it thinking, I can do it, my work is good, because even scholars who can do it get rejected by journals. So consider that as well.
Thank you. Well, that was the last question. We are almost getting to time as well. I don't know if you want to add any comment before ending the session.
I think just to thank Petra for the invitation and to you, Matilde, for moderating the session. It was a pleasure. And I finally hope it was interesting and helpful for the audience. Thank you very much.
And again, thank you also, Andre, for networking and for the accommodation as well. And thank you so much, Matilde, for being a gracious moderator and for graciously accepting to do this. And thank you to the audience for spending 2 entire hours with us. You know, just before we did it, we were like, are we overkilling the audience? But the audience actually remained and engaged in the discussion. So thank you for the healthy discussion and for showing us how important this discourse is.
Okay, thank you very much. I consider it has been a very informative and interesting session. We just have somebody's asking for Andre's email. If you can share your email, Andrea, that would be great. And we also get the answers here. That it has been a very helpful webinar, informative session. So thank you. I think this has been a great session. I hope you all got some takeaways. And well, I wish you all a wonderful afternoon, and thank you very much for your time and joining us.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.